So let's talk about the iPad Pro Magic Keyboard. But before I talk about the iPad Pro's Magic Keyboard, I just want to make a big disclaimer. And the big disclaimer is this was sent out for review purposes only. So keep that in mind as you're watching this video. But luckily, my thoughts and opinions on this product will not actually change just because I got a review unit. So without further ado, let's actually talk about the brand new iPad Magic Keyboard. Now, the iPad Magic Keyboard, unfortunately, is going to be for the iPad Pro line, and it's going to be for the 2018 and the 2020 edition of the iPad Pro. So if you bought your iPad Pro in 2018 or 2020, then you are going to be good to go there. Keep in mind the iPad Pro's Magic Keyboard, whether you buy it for the 11-inch version or the 12.9 version, just keep in mind these are very expensive for what they are. The one that you are looking at in front of you is actually the 12.9 edition, and the 12.9 edition of this product is actually going to cost you $350. So you can see that's pretty expensive just for a keyboard case. And then I think the smaller one's about $270, $250. Either way, they're really expensive products for what they are. And here's what the actual box looks like if you're actually thinking about buying this for yourself. I did get this brand new in the box for review purposes. And then here it is right here on the back. It just shows all the different angles you can actually angle this thing if you wanted to use this thing, and there's all the different angles right there. And in the box, you really don't get too much with this product. I think you get the keyboard case, and you do get some paperwork in the box with this thing that pretty much just shows you the same thing that's on the back of the box. Kind of funny, but that is how it is for this specific product, and that's pretty much all you get with this product. But there's the box. Now let's actually take a look at the actual Magic Keyboard for the iPad Pro 12.9 edition. Here it is right here, right in front of me. Again, this is the 12.9 inch version of this product right here. And you can see it is a pretty good design, honestly. I pretty much like everything about this iPad's Magic Keyboard when it actually comes to the design. I will have to say the material that they actually used on this product is not the best. A lot of people do get a lot of scuffs, a lot of junk will start to build and things like that. It's just fortunate enough for me specifically, I did not experience any of those issues. Maybe I didn't own this thing long enough, but I'm sure over time this thing would start looking very nasty after a while. But what I will say is I am actually a big fan of this material, even though this material's not the best material in the world, just because, like I stated before, it does get roughed up, it does get nasty over time. I do like the material because, for me personally, I like the way it feels in your hand. It's kind of like a rubbery silicone type material. Another thing people have said with this type of material on the last iPad Pro's keyboards, the Smart Folio keyboards, they did say over time these things do start to wear down quite fast because the material can end up damaging. So I'm not sure how long this would actually last in the long run if you're thinking about buying this product, since this product is a very expensive product at that. So taking a look at the actual design of this thing from the outside of it, you can see it pretty much just goes over the iPad Pro, and you can see it doesn't cover the camera. The camera cutout right there is actually exposed if you wanted to take pictures and things like that. The one thing I'm not really a big fan of when it comes to this case is the fact that the Magic Keyboard for the iPad Pro line is actually a case that is actually uncovered. So that means the sides of the device will be uncovered if you are traveling. So you still really want to be careful with things rubbing against your iPad or bumping your iPad, because if you get something to bump your iPad, you could potentially scratch your iPad or put a dent in your iPad. That's kind of unfortunate, taking in consideration that this thing is very expensive for what it is. And yeah, pretty much almost all sides are going to be unprotected with this thing. So just keep that in mind if you're thinking about buying that. And then on the front of it, you can probably see on camera, it may be hard to see, but it does have an Apple logo. It is the same color as the actual Magic Keyboard case. And this Magic Keyboard case also only comes in one color as far as I'm aware. It comes in like this space gray type material. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the design of it. I will also have to say that with the Magic Keyboard attached to the iPad Pro, specifically the iPad Pro 12.9 version, it does get very heavy when you're actually lugging this thing around. I think it weighs around like 3 pounds. It definitely weighs more than the current MacBook Air. So if you're thinking about the MacBook Air versus a completely decked out 12.9-inch iPad Pro with the Magic Keyboard, it does get fairly hefty, so just keep that in mind. When you pick this thing up, it may look kind of light, but it is very sturdy and also very heavy to actually hold in the hand. That's really the only downside to this thing, but it's not that big a deal, and I don't think most people are going to mind, because most of the time it'll be on a desk, or for instance it may be in your backpack when you're actually traveling, and it's still going to be lighter than some laptops out there on the market. And if you need to get some real work done, I don't think this is actually a bad option. Now let's actually go over to the keyboard opened up, and I can actually show you how this thing actually looks and how this thing actually functions, and then I can talk about my my things that I like about this Magic Keyboard and things that I don't like about this Magic Keyboard. So here is the Magic Keyboard actually opened up, but before I talk about the Magic Keyboard specifically, I do actually want to talk about the function of this Magic Keyboard. So there are a couple of different positions you can actually angle the iPad when the iPad is actually in this case, and the nice thing about the angles is there are some variety in the angles. You can actually angle your iPad, like for instance this is all the way back, so you can't go farther than this, unfortunately. So if you wanted a much more farther back angle, unfortunately that's not going to happen, but I think for a lot of people that's not going to be a big deal, and most people are going to be okay with this angle right here. The other angle is right here, and then there is one angle like right here, I think, where it automatically snaps back into place, which is actually pretty convenient. And then you got there, you can pretty much play around with the angles, so that is nice. They do give you different angles to actually play around with this keyboard case. One of the biggest downsides to this keyboard case, which I do have to get out of the way really quickly, is the fact that you cannot use your iPad Pro as a traditional tablet in a sense if you do have the Magic Keyboard, so keep that in mind. Basically what I mean by that is if you wanted to use your tablet like you're holding it as you would normally hold a regular tablet, you can't just fold this thing back to actually use it as like a regular tablet. Like for instance, if you want to lay it on your lap or just bring it around with you like a normal tablet, there is no option for that. So this case may not be for those people. Fortunately enough, there is one nice thing about the Magic Keyboard that I do love. I do love the fact that they did make this thing kind of float, and the nice thing about this thing kind of being raised up at this angle is the fact that, I don't know if you can see my hand, but it does go back behind the iPad, and it's actually really good because that means you can just pull this thing off of the keyboard case and use it as a traditional tablet, and then when you're done you can put it back on the keyboard case if you want to get some real work done. So that is very nice. Just note that of course then your iPad won't be protected as you're using it when you pull it off the Magic Keyboard, so that is kind of a downside depending on how you want to look at it. And basically how this actually attaches to the Magic, to the actual iPad Pro is very simple and very easy. Basically, there are some magnets on it, and then once you put your iPad up to the actual case, it will just automatically stick to it, which is really nice. And it does use the pins on the iPad itself, so you don't need things like batteries or any extra cables. It pretty much just works very seamless. Let me go ahead and pull it off the case so you can kind of see what I am actually talking about. You can see I did pull it off the case right there. It did come off, and here is my here is the iPad Pro right there. And then if I want to use it as or use it with the Magic Keyboard, it is actually very simple. All you really have to do is just line it up with the case, and it automatically pretty much just sticks to it immediately. And it is nice, you don't have to really line it up all too much. It pretty much just knows where to line it up because it does have a lot of magnets. And the nice thing with this Magic Keyboard is the fact that the Magic Keyboard is actually very sturdy, so don't worry about your iPad falling off and things like that. You do have a very secure fit when it actually comes to this keyboard specifically. Now let's actually talk about the keyboard itself. So you can see here is the keyboard right here. First off, the nice thing about this keyboard is the fact that this is not the same keyboard experience you would be getting on Apple's cheaper keyboards, which they do make, called the Apple something the Folio keyboards, and the Folio keyboards are cheaper, but they do have a worse typing experience without a doubt. If you want a keyboard that's pretty much going to mimic a traditional laptop, or for instance mimic like a MacBook Air or a MacBook Pro, then this is going to be the keyboard case for you. These keys do have a lot of travel, and like I said again, it's pretty much just mimicking the experience you would get on a traditional laptop. So that's actually very good, because I know a lot of people want their typing experience to be as good as possible. So they did really not skimp on this setup alone. The experience is amazing, and if you use a traditional laptop, you'll feel right at home here when it comes to this keyboard case alone. Another thing I really do like about this Magic Keyboard is the fact that Apple realized some users would be using this in certain scenarios where they would need a backlight for the keys. So this does have backlight support. Granted, you can't see the backlight now because I do have it actually disabled. I pretty much turn it off because for me personally, I'm not really in too many scenarios where I find myself needing to actually use the backlight on it, just due to the fact that it does drain a little bit more battery from the iPad, since you are using the iPad's battery in the first place. So that is a con right away, but at least they do give you that option. Speaking really quickly on the backlight of the Magic Keyboard, the one downside of it is nice. It does have a backlight, but unfortunately the biggest flaw with the Magic Keyboard is the fact that if you used any of the traditional MacBooks, whether it be the MacBook Air or the MacBook Pro or other laptops maybe, you may know that there are function keys, and the biggest downside to this specific keyboard alone for the iPad Pro line is the fact that you don't have any function keys. So that pretty much means, like for instance the backlight, you can't just change the backlight brightness whenever you want. You have to change it in the settings, which can be kind of annoying. Luckily, the Magic Keyboard does have a feature where it can use the ambient light sensor on the actual iPad to adjust the brightness whenever you change environments, or whenever you, like maybe for instance, change the brightness of your room by turning off your lights, dimming them, and things like that. So that's something I really do like, but not having those function keys is actually a big deal, and I'm a person that actually uses function keys more than I actually thought. After using this for a week, like I said, I really do wish the function keys were there, and it's not like they couldn't fit them on this thing. They could have put them right under there. Sure, you would have to stretch your hand a little bit under the iPad, but that would have been okay. Or maybe they could have put them by the actual trackpad itself, because there is room on here for those function keys. I specifically miss those function keys for things like changing the brightness or changing the volume. A lot of times, a lot of different applications or songs do have some kind of sound balancing issues where you go from one song to another or one video to another, and sometimes the sound will be louder than others, and sometimes you don't want it to be loud, but then it's kind of annoying. You can still get to like your control center and change the actual volume of the actual device, but it would be nice if you can just do it on the fly with function keys. But it's not the end of the world. Maybe in the next iteration of the Magic Keyboard Generation 2 they will fix this problem and things like that. And the biggest key difference between this and the Folio case that Apple does sell, which is cheaper, of course, the big highlight of this Magic Keyboard for the iPad is going to be the fact that you do get a trackpad here. Take note, the trackpad on here is actually smaller than any of the MacBooks. Whether you buy the MacBook Pros or the MacBook Airs, you do get a smaller trackpad without a doubt, which can be kind of a downside, to be honest, just because it can be kind of annoying without a traditional without a little bigger trackpad. But honestly, it's not that big a deal since it is pretty big to begin with. And overall, I really do like the experience on the trackpad, because it does feel like any other trackpad I ever used. Maybe it could be slightly bigger, but overall it's not that big a deal. And it is kind of cool that the iPad, for the first time, it may be hard to see on camera, but you do actually have a cursor. Sure, it's not a traditional cursor that you would get on like a laptop or a desktop. If you ever used a traditional trackpad or a traditional mouse on a computer, you won't be getting that experience. But I really do think Apple does have this whole thing optimized to where it is really nice to use a cursor on iOS. To be honest, I really do like the ability of having this cursor. And the nice thing about the cursor is when you're moving the cursor around, anytime you go over like a like an application or a box that should be clicked on, it does actually grasp to it. It may be hard to see on camera, but you can see when I go over certain applications, the application icon does get slightly bigger to let you know that, oh, you're clicking on, or you're hovering over one of these applications. And that's something that I actually really do like about this, since again, you don't have a traditional cursor, so you wouldn't be able to see the cursor. So that's something that's actually very nice. Another thing I really do like about the Magic Keyboard specifically is the fact that there are a lot of options in the settings if you actually want to customize your experience, and there is a lot to go over. Like for instance, you can change the size of the cursor, you can also change the color of the cursor, you can also change the way you move the cursor around, if you still want it to drag around when you move it, or do you just want it to be like, for instance, if you want it to not drag after you're done moving your hand over the actual trackpad. So there is a lot of features there to be had in the settings. It is kind of unfortunate, again, just like the backlight for the keyboard, you do actually have to go into settings to change everything for the Magic Keyboard, but all those options are there, and I do think they give you a fairly big amount of features that you can actually change for the Magic Keyboard, which I am fairly happy with, to be honest. And yeah, that's pretty much it for this Magic Keyboard. Is it worth $350 for the 12.9 inch? Is it worth like $250 to $270 for the smaller 11-inch one? It'll depend on your use case. Are you trying to make the iPad Pro more of a laptop replacement? Do you do a lot of typing? If you do a lot of typing, I know this may sound kind of crazy. I personally really do think that this is actually worth the money if you're doing a lot of typing. Again, the biggest key feature with this is it has a backlight, and it has the same keys you would be getting on a traditional laptop. Let me go into an application and actually go to something so you can actually hear how the keyboard actually sounds in operation. So you can see it's a legit keyboard. It's pretty much, again, the same thing you'd get on a traditional laptop. And also with the trackpad here as well, I did forget to mention this. The trackpad experience on this Magic Keyboard to begin with does have a lot of gestures. So if you're used to using gestures on like any traditional MacBook, then you'll also feel right at home here. There are some different gestures you do kind of have to get used to compared to a traditional MacBook or a traditional laptop. Also, going back to the functions on this keyboard, I really do wish there were some functions like a traditional escape key and things like that, because there is no escape key here. That's one thing you don't get with most of the function keys, or no function keys being here on the iPad Pro's Magic Keyboard. But overall, my experiences with this have been absolutely fantastic, and I love everything about this Magic Keyboard. And honestly, after using this for a week, I really do think, this sounds crazy, but I really do think I could potentially replace my laptop with the iPad Pro. If I have the iPad Pro plus the Magic Keyboard, I know it is very expensive. Having this setup alone will cost you much more money than something like a base MacBook Air, for sure. So it really just depends on your use case. But for my use case, I really do think this is an amazing setup. Sure, it is very expensive, especially this keyboard case alone. They are practically, I don't really want to say ripping you off, but for $350, it is very expensive. It should have been somewhere around like $150 to maybe $200, but Apple is Apple, and they are a premium brand in the tech space, so Apple is allowed to do this. But you're not going to be disappointed. I think for most people, if you do pull the trigger on this product, if you do a lot of typing, or you just really want to replace your laptop and you want to try to use this as a laptop replacement, I don't think you'll be disappointed in any stretch of the imagination. I really do think this is worth it. And honestly, now that I'm using this product, I've been using this pretty much for a week straight, and this is practically a device that I've been testing a lot for this review, and I can safely say that honestly, I would personally, if I had the money, run out and buy something like this, because I'm having so much fun using this than my traditional laptop, whether it be my regular laptop or whether it be my desktop computer. I'm having so much fun using the iPad the iPad Pro as a laptop replacement, and just due to the fact also that you do have some versatility here. You can use it on the Magic Keyboard, and then when you're done with the Magic Keyboard, this kind of reminds me of the Nintendo Switch setup, where you can take the Switch in and out of the dock just like this setup. You can take the iPad off the Magic Keyboard whenever you want, and it's pretty much a seamless experience and nothing too crazy. And I love the fact too, sometimes when I'm done typing, done doing work and things that are a little bit more intensive, where I would maybe want to use this as like a desk, at like maybe a desk, or maybe I want to type something out or kind of do normal things you would do on a laptop or a normal desktop computer. I can pull it off and then sit and relax at like a couch or a chair and do things like multimedia, watch videos, just browse the internet, listen to music, read documents on the internet. That's something I do love, the versatility of this product. And I'm just going to go ahead and say one more time, I really do think this is worth the money if you can justify the money. If you're a person that types a lot, or if you're a person that does a lot of things that are laptop-y-esque, I really do think the experience here is actually pretty amazing. One thing I do want to talk about with this product specifically, I actually really do want to talk about the fact that with this product specifically, I do want to touch on the fact that for this Magic Keyboard, for some reason, compared to my regular laptop or regular desktop computer, I actually find myself using more shortcut commands. I don't know why that is. I guess I never really had a laptop in the past that actually had a touchscreen, and for some reason I'm not used to actually touching the touchscreen of my iPad when it's actually on the Magic Keyboard. So basically what ends up happening is, it really just boils down to the fact that I guess I'm used to using a keyboard, so I end up using a lot of shortcuts. Also, I ended up using a lot of gestures, more so on this than I did on my laptop with the actual trackpad. So almost all the time I'm using a lot of these shortcuts and a lot of these different gestures on the trackpad that really do enhance my experience. The one thing I don't like about this before I end the video is, it's kind of unfortunate that Apple right out the box doesn't automatically give you all the shortcuts and all the commands that this keyboard can do, because there is a lot of things this keyboard can do when it comes to shortcuts, when it comes to the gestures you can actually use on the trackpad. And it is kind of weird. They really want you to buy this device for so much money, but then again, they don't really want to explain how to use all the little shortcut keyboards, or the shortcuts on the keyboard, or the trackpad gestures, which you have to look up online. Unfortunately, I feel like if you want to really take full advantage of this keyboard, but overall, this is a 2 thumbs up, and I can't recommend this. I can't not recommend this enough. I just think that it may be a little bit too expensive. So maybe if you find this thing used, or if you get like a gift card or something like that, that's where I really do think that this thing comes in. But again, I think for some people it may be justifiable and you won't be disappointed with your purchase. Anyway, guys, this is Wayne from My Tech News, signing out.